The Olympus E P3 was released back in 2011. Now, at the time, this cost around $900. Nowadays, you can find it used for about $75. That's how much I paid for this one right here. So just what do you get with this 11-year-old camera? Well, there's a 12.3 megapixel micro four thirds sensor, a 35 area autofocus system, and a 3-inch 614K dot OLED touchscreen. Build quality of the EP3 is metal and plastic. The Pen series has always had kind of a nice sort of upscale feel, and this is no different. I mean, even for a tiny camera like this, it actually has kind of a bit of weight to it. Definitely feels sturdy and solid in the hands. In terms of shutter speed, you've got up to 1/4000th of a second. You know, it would have been nice to see it go all the way up to 1/8000th of a second, but that's fine. It's not really a deal breaker. And in terms of flash sync speed, you've got up to 1/180th of a second. In terms of burst rate, you've got 3 frames per second up to 17 frames in RAW and 3 frames per second unlimited in JPEG. Basically, you can just shoot until your memory card runs out. As far as autofocus goes, you've got a 35 area contrast detect autofocus system. It's really quick and accurate for photography. In terms of video, on the other hand, it's just okay. It's not quite as bad or as inaccurate as certain other companies' contrast detect systems, but as far as like modern cameras go, it's not really on par with that either. Like, it's fine for just kind of filming casual things around the house, but in no way, shape, or form is it going to replace the EM1 Mark II that films these videos. Still though, it's not bad, it's just not a selling feature of this camera. Also, another thing that I want to note about autofocus is you have touch to focus, but it only works in photography mode. So when you're in video mode, it would be wildly convenient to just tap the screen to get it to focus on that, but you can't select your focus points that way in video. Only works in photo mode. Now, as far as image stabilization goes, you've got 3-axis in-body image stabilization, which actually works really well in photography mode. Once you're in video mode, you only have electronic image stabilization, which is kind of a bummer. The other thing that I really want to point out about image stabilization in video mode on this camera is there is a ton of rolling shutter. It's almost on par with like the Sony ZV-E10. For those of you guys that are more casual and don't know what rolling shutter is, picture this as like the sides of your frame. Now, when you pan on a camera with no rolling shutter, it stays perfectly steady. The sides stay straight. When you pan on a camera with bad rolling shutter, you immediately just see this wobbly, like warpy, kind of trippy stuff, and it looks pretty bad. Unfortunately, the EP3 does have pretty bad rolling shutter, so when you're filming with this camera, you've got to be really mindful with your movements. You got to keep your movements really slow and concentrated. Just out of curiosity, image stabilization is back on now. Does it handle, let's switch up. Does it handle these walk and talk segments, or do you still just see like all that warpy stuff, all that jello effect every time like there's a bump, every time I'm stepping? Is it all wavy looking, or does it look all right? In terms of photography, the EP3 is a great little camera to just bring with you wherever you go. You've got really good image quality in both RAW and JPEG, and it's so small, it's one of those cameras that you hardly even notice that you have it with you. You know, the EP3 would make a great street photography camera, although that LCD screen is fixed, so if you're shooting down at like waist level, kind of having a harder time seeing that because it doesn't tilt up to face you. But other than that, it's a nice small compact camera that's kind of unobtrusive. You know, no one really pays attention to it, especially if you're using this camera with a pancake lens like the Panasonic 14mm f2.5 or Panasonic 20mm f1.7. It's a pretty small setup. I could also see the EP3 making a great travel camera because you've got this really cool photo video hybrid. Does a pretty decent job with both. You know, as far as photography goes, the EP3 is pretty solid.
All that's said is done, all that's done, gone under the sun. Won't you come with me, fall in love like nothing matters except for us.
Yeah, everybody fall down once. Yeah, every look go fall down once. Yeah, everybody fall down once. Yeah, every look go fall down once. Hold it when it come. It ain't gonna stay when it drop it when it fall down. Pick that shit up. Hold it when it come. It ain't gonna stay when it drop it when it fall down. Pick that shit up. Sick of love slipping through fingertips. Watch that flame, keep it flickering.
In terms of video, the EP3 does 1080p at 30 frames per second, and that's it. Actually, it's a little bit better than that. It does 1080p 30 at 17 megabits per second. Now, for those of you who aren't video people and you're not into codecs and bit rates, to give you an idea, the Olympus EM1 Mark II that's filming the video you're currently watching, it's doing 4K 24 frames per second at 237 megabits per second, meaning the EP3 is only behind by a scant 220 megabits per second, but it's not all bad. See, the EP3 shares one thing in common with the EM1 Mark II, and that's Olympus color signs. You know, this is a camera that has certain limitations in video mode, but for a skilled filmmaker who's aware of those limitations and works with them and works around them, you can still get really good-looking footage out of this camera. I was getting ready to film the sample video for this segment, and then it started raining, so just kind of improvise and see what we can get around the house. And of course, that begs the obvious question, is the EP3 worth it in 2022? And for me, this one's an easy one. It's a definite yes. You know, you've got a great camera that you can bring with you anywhere you go. It does good photo and video. I mean, finding a hybrid camera like that under $100 is pretty crazy in this day and age. You know, not to mention the EP3 just has that kind of premium feel. It's got really good build quality, and it just makes for a really nice user experience. For me, the EP3 is just a 10 out of 10. I mean, you're getting so much camera for under $100. It's definitely worth checking out. Anyway, I think that's all I've got for today, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.